Hello, good evening, and welcome to a new episode of Arguably the Reading Quest. I am Nishant. So it just appeared to me that I did a video on some of the geniuses who were overlooked by the Nobel Prize Committee. But I never did a full-length video on, some of the geniuses uh, who were awarded Nobel Prize in Literature, whom you're supposed to read from the past century, that is from the 20th century, please mind it. I'm not including geniuses from the 21st century in this video because that I have already been doing in my series, The Ultra Contemporary Writings. That is the Nobel Prize winners in literature post year 2000. So, in this video, I'm going to talk about 10 Nobel Prize winners in literature, uh, which I feel all of you must read. I have, excluded geniuses who are either a part of rigorous academic curriculum or who, in some cases, are or have become, larger than the Nobel Prize itself, or who are, so much rooted in a tradition of a country that we do not need to refer to Nobel Prize in order to read them. So, the first category of geniuses I have excluded are W.B. Yeats and T.S. Eliot, who have been, rigorously a part of academic curriculum. In the second category, I have excluded geniuses like Tagore, on whom I have already made separate videos, and whom I believe we don't need to, look up to Nobel Prize Committee to read them, and who are very much a part of, uh, Indian tradition. They're synonymous with India. I have also excluded, poets from this list. Uh, you know, so that I'll be doing a separate video on, the poet laureates who have been awarded Nobel Prize in Literature. So this video is confined only to, the Nobel Prize in Literatures concerning the novelists. So here we go. You know, so the first name, and he has received the Nobel Prize in Literature in the year 1908. He is Rudolf Christoph Eucken. Rudolf Christoph Eucken. He was a German, and I don't know how many of you know it. I have done a video on him on the history of philosophy section. So he wrote this book, The Problems of Human Life as Viewed by the Great Thinkers from Plato to Marx. In this, uh, he received the Nobel Prize in the year 1908 for literature. And what did the Nobel Prize Committee cite? In recognition of his earnest search for truth, his penetrating power of thought, his wise range of vision, and the warmth and strength in presentation with which, in his numerous works, he has vindicated and developed an idealistic philosophy of life. Rudolf Eucken. What surprises me is that, you won't find Rudolf Eucken published at any of the well-known publishers, be it Rutledge, be it, Cambridge University, be it Stanford University, presses that are very much famous for publishing books on philosophy. And this is at, Scholars Select, a very well-known, a very lesser-known, publisher which publishes books such as these that are obscure or lesser known. So, a German writing history on Western philosophy is definitely to be taken seriously. An amazing book. Please read it. Another name that immediately comes to my mind and is very much associated with India, as he has a long correspondence with Tagore, is none other than Roma Rolla from France. So, Roma Rolla has been awarded a Nobel Prize in Literature, as the committee cites, as a tribute to the lofty idealism of his literary production. Please see, the stress is on lofty idealism of his literary production and to the sympathy and love of truth with which he has described different types of human beings. Yes, he has described different types of human being, and no wonder he was a biographer of Ramakrishna, he was a biographer of Gandhi, he was a biographer of Vivekanand, and he has a long correspondence with, Ravindranath. Somehow his book is misplaced. I have read his The Life of a Swan, that is the biography of Ramakrishna. So Roma Rolla is definitely to be read if you are interested in something deeply rooted in Indian culture. Roma Rolla says, If there is one place on the face of earth where all the dreams of living men have found a home from the very earliest days when man began the dreams of existence, it is India, says Romarola. I don't know what, you know, substantiates his panegyric on India, but this is what he says. So please read Romarola. I will suggest his correspondence with Tagore, a series of letters, published at Oxford University Press. You can easily find that at Amazon. Well, another name, again, I am sure, very lesser known, very less discussed in the social media circle, because the whole social media is all about either Kafka or Pablo Neruda or Gabriel Garcia Marquez or Albert Camus, sorry to say. So the third name is Knut Hamsun. Knut Hamsun, for his monumental work, The Growth of Soil. But the book I am displaying here is Hunger by Knut Hamsun. Knut Hamsun was from Norway, and the Nobel Committee cites just a phrase for his monumental work, Growth of the Soil, which is published at, Rupa. I have read, his major work, Growth of Soil, as well as his Hunger. So this is what Knut Hamsun is all about. Hamsun is considered to be one of the most influential and innovative literary stylist of the past 100 years, that is from 1890 to 1990. He pioneered psychological literature with techniques of the streams of consciousness and interior monologue, and influenced authors such as Thomas Mann, Franz Kafka, Maxim Gorky, Henry Miller, Hermann Hesse, Charles Bukowski, and Ernest Hemingway. Isaac Singer called Hamsun the father of the modern school of literature in his every aspect: his subjectiveness, his fragmentariness, his use of flashbacks, his lyricism. The whole modern school of fiction in the 20th century stems from Hamsun. Thomas Mann described him as a descendant of Fyodor Dostoevsky and Friedrich Nietzsche. Yes, a descendant of Fyodor Dostoevsky and Friedrich Nietzsche. If you think this is hyperbole, then you must read Hamsun's Hunger, one of the most disturbing novels in existence. It is far, far more disturbing than Kafka's Metamorphosis. Please read Hunger is a psycho-realistic portrait of a wandering, hungry and lonely artist, a writer who is trying to make his ends meet. A character in Charles Bukowski books, women refer to him as the greatest writer who has ever lived, and rightly so. This is what Hamsun writes. Rather than admire the mediocre great men over whom passers-by nudge each other in awe, I venerate the young, unknown geniuses who die in their teens. Their souls shattered, delicate, phosphorescent glowworms that one must see to know they really did exist, says Knut Hamsun. Another writer that comes to my mind is again from Germany, and he is none other than Thomas Mann. So Thomas Mann, as the Nobel Prize Committee cites, principally for his great novel Broadens, which has won steadily increased recognition as one of the classic works of contemporary literature. Fair enough, you are entitled to your opinion. You can read Broadens. You can read his Dr. Faustus. You can read his Magic Mountain. But one, book that I suggest is his collection of short stories, his collected stories. It is published at Bantam Classic. The book I am showing is published at Everyman's Library. So all his age, all his life, he couldn't surpass the literary genius that he has exhibited in his writings of short stories, be it The Death in Venice, be it Tonio Kruger, be it Joker, and other such short stories. He was a genius who is known to have portrayed, the psychology of the artists. Immediately when we talk of psychology of the artist, a name that comes to our mind is James Joyce. But James Joyce is a different league altogether. Thomas Mann is a different universe altogether. The psychology of the artist and all his life, if one theme that governs his writing, that underlies his writing, is that there is a discord between sanity and genius. The geniuses have a hint of madness, and that is what best reflected in his collected stories. So please read Thomas Mann. I'll just quote a few excerpts that will give you, a glimpse of his writing. From Death in Venice and Other Tales, also known as collected stories as I displayed. Sorry. Solitude gives birth to the original in us, to beauty unfamiliar and perilous, to poetry. Solitude gives birth to the original in us, to beauty unfamiliar and perilous, to poetry. But it also gives birth to the opposite, to the perverse, the illicit, the absurd. Nothing is more curious. You see this beautiful. Nothing is more curious and awkward than the relationship of two people who, while they know each other with their eyes, who meet and observe each other daily, even hourly, and who keep up the impression of disinterestedness, either because of morals or because of a mental abnormality. Because between them, there is a listlessness and pent up curiosity, the hysteria of an unsatisfied, unnaturally suppressed need for communion, and also a kind of tense respect. Because man loves and honors man as long as he is not able to judge him, and the desire is a product of lacking knowledge, says Thomas Mann. So Thomas Mann is highly recommended if you are wanting to read something, highly literary. Now, another genius from Germany itself is none other than Hermann Hesse from Germany and Switzerland. And this is what the Nobel Committee quotes: for his inspired writings, which, while growing in boldness and penetration, exemplify the classical humanitarian ideals and high qualities of style. Please know here the stress is on high qualities of style, and you need to read Hermann Hesse to understand, what high quality of style uh, Nobel Prize committee cites. What did the committee mean by high quality of style? His novels are so lyrical that they are almost, very, very difficult to translate in English. I have read all his novels, all his writings in English translation, and trust me, it is not Dostoevsky who influenced me the most, it is not Russell who has influenced me the most, it is Hermann Hesse who has influenced me the most in my most impressionable year, and still continue to do so. So, of course, there are multiple books I have done, series of videos on Hermann Hesse. But this time I would like to, quote The Glass Bead Game by Hermann Hesse, his final magnum opus, The Glass Bead Game by Hermann Hesse. Please read it. But I'll quote two quotes from Hermann Hesse, Steppenwolf and Demim. There is no reality except the one contained within us. That is why so many people live such an unreal life. They take the images outside of them for reality and never allow the world within to assert itself, says Hermann Hesse from Steppenwolf. Every man is more than just himself. He also represents the unique, the very special and always significant and remarkable point at which the world's phenomena intersect, only once in this way and never again. That is why every man's story is important, eternal, sacred. That is why every man, as long as he lives and fulfills the will of nature, is wondrous and worthy of consideration. In each individual, the spirit has become flesh. In each man, the creation suffers. Within each one, a redeemer is nailed to the cross, says Hermann Hesse in Demia. Another Nobel Prize winner in literature, and of course, he was a mathematician who wrote volumes of books on philosophy and has been awarded a Nobel Prize in literature. And he was jailed many times for his, transgressive views on society and sex. And he was a champion of human freedom of thought, none other than Bertrand Russell. And the Nobel Prize Committee cites, in recognition of his varied and significant writings, in which he champions humanitarian ideals and freedom of thought. So if one book of Bertrand Russell, I have done series of videos on Russell, but if one book you have to read, that should be the history of Western philosophy. Please read his history of Western philosophy. I insist You please read Bertrand Russell for 5 years and forget the rest. For all those who want to embark upon a lifelong journey of reading, there are just two quotes that I'd like to speak on. To quote, to teach how to live without certainty and yet without being paralyzed by hesitation is perhaps the chief thing that philosophy in our age can still do for those who study it. Men fear thought as they fear nothing else on earth, more than ruin, more even than death. Thought is subversive and revolutionary, destructive and terrible. Thought is merciless to privilege, established institutions and comfortable habits. Thought is archaic and lawless, indifferent to authority, careless of the well-tried wisdom of the ages. Thought looks into the pit of hell and is not afraid. Thought is great and swift and free, the light of the world and the chief glory of man, says Bertrand Russell in Why Men Fight. So, Nobel Prize Committee insisted for his humanitarian ideals and freedom of thought. So please read Russell. The next name is Albert Camus from France. And the Nobel Prize Committee cites for his important literary production, which with clear-sighted earnestness illuminates the problem of the human conscience of our times. And trust me, it was Albert Camus who gave hope to millions and millions of people who were distraught and devastated by war, post-war Europe. In the post-war Europe. And he gave hope to millions of people to look up to and live the life, to live in the face of adversity. And that is why you see the insistence here is on illuminates the problems of human conscience of our time. I know when it comes to Albert Camus, the names that immediately comes to our mind are The Stranger and the Plague, of course, the myth of Sisyphus, the rebel. But this time I beg to differ. I want to, suggest one book, and that is The First Man. The First Man is search for meaning and identity about a boy who lost his father in war. So please read The First Man. And I think it was published posthumously, The First Man. You see, two quotes, full of wisdom and full of strength. One is from Sisyphus and one is from his notebooks. I leave Sisyphus at the foot of the mountain. One always finds one's burden again. But Sisyphus teaches the higher fidelity that negates the gods and raises rocks. He too concludes that all is well. The universe henceforth without a master seems to him neither sterile nor futile. Each atom of that stone, each mineral flake of that night-filled mountain, in itself forms a world. The struggle itself towards the heights is enough to fill a man's heart. One must imagine Sisyphus happy. This is such a powerful line. I leave Sisyphus at the foot of the mountain, and the struggle itself towards the heights is enough to fill a man's heart. One must imagine Sisyphus happy. And then you see, this is, the best of the self-help quotes that you can find, full of wisdom and a philosophical sagacity. Find meaning, distinguish melancholy from sadness, go out for a walk. It doesn't have to be a romantic walk in the park. Spring at its most spectacular moment, flowers and smells and outstanding poetical imagery, smoothly transferring you into another world. It doesn't have to be a walk during which you will have multiple life epiphanies and discover meanings no other brain ever imagined to encounter. Do not be afraid of spending quality time by yourself. Find meaning or don't find meaning, but steal some time and give it freely and exclusively to your own self. Opt for privacy and solitude. That does not make you antisocial or cause you to reject the rest of the world, but you need to breathe and you need to be. You see, this is as relevant as ever and ever more relevant in today's scenario. So Albert Camus. Another dramatist, novelist, and the last modernist. And he was assistant to the great James Joyce. I don't know whether you have guessed it or not. Yes, he is Samuel Beckett from Ireland. And this is what Michel Foucault says on Samuel Beckett in the year 1983, and I quote verbatim. I belong to that generation who as students had before their eyes and were limited by a horizon consisting of Marxism, phenomenology and existentialism. For me, the break was first Beckett's Waiting for Godot, a breathtaking performance, says Michel Foucault. So you can understand the genius of Samuel Beckett. The Nobel Prize Committee cites, you see, James Joyce never won a Nobel Prize in literature. Perhaps he was much, much greater than that. He was a paradigmatic figure. But his assistant, James Samuel Beckett, won a Nobel in literature. And the Nobel Prize Committee cites, for his writing which, in new forms for the novel and drama, in the destitution of modern man, acquires its elevation. Please hear once again. For his writing, which in the destitution of modern man, acquires its elevation. Then, one of the critiques says, I realize that Joyce has gone as far as one could in the direction of knowing more, being in control of one's material. He was always adding to it. You only have to look at his proofs to see that, says Samuel Beckett about his master James Joyce. I realized that my own way was one in impoverishment, in lack of knowledge, and in taking away, in subtracting rather than adding. Then another critique, Noelson, argues that Beckett was rejecting the Joycean principle that knowing more was a way of creatively understanding the world and controlling it. In future, his work would focus on poverty, failure, exile, and loss, and as he put it, on man as a non-knower. And trust me, the one book of Beckett, I have his complete dramatic work, a beautiful paperback, you see, published at Favor and Favor. So one drama that you must read is Waiting for Godot, of course. So I've read Godot, I've read multiple criticism and literary analysis on Godot, and reread Godot, multiple times. So if you want to buy the complete dramatic work, it is available at Favor and Favor. To quote Samuel Beckett, ever tried, ever failed, no matter, try again, fail better, says Samuel Beckett. The Tuesday scowls, the Wednesday growls, the Thursday curses, the Friday howls, the Saturday snores, the Sunday yawns, the Monday mourns, the Monday mourns. The wax, the mourn, the crack, the groan, the wail, the squeaks, the bell, the shrieks, the pricks, the peers, the kicks, the tears, the scalps, and the yelps, says Samuel Beckett in his What? So, another novelist, the father of existential writing from America is Saul Bellow, very less talked about in social media. I don't know why. And he got a Nobel Prize in Literature in the year 1976 for the human understanding and the subtle analysis of contemporary culture that are combined in his work. For the human understanding, the stress on this phrase, the human understanding, and the subtle analysis of contemporary culture that are combined in his work. You have to read Saul Bellow to believe that, if you read Saul Bellow's Her Job, which is highly recommended, I bet it can be very well compared to, any great novel by Milan Kundera. It can even be compared to Immortality by Milan Kundera. And this is not a hyperbole. This is a very realistic statement to make. So please read Herzog. I'll quote, 3 passages from Herzog to give you a glimpse of, what a genius literary writer he was. But what is the philosophy of this generation? Not that God is dead. That point was passed long ago. Perhaps it should be stated that death is God. This generation thinks, and this is its thought of thoughts, that nothing faithful, vulnerable, fragile
can be durable or have any true power. Death waits for these things as a cement floor waits for a dropping light bulb. The brittle shell of glass loses its tiny vacuum with a burst, and that is that. And this is how we teach metaphysics on each other. You think history is the history of loving hearts? You fool! Look at these millions of dead. Can you pity them, feel for them? You can nothing. There were too many. We burned them to ashes. We buried them with bulldozers. History is the history of cruelty, not love as soft men think, says Herzog, one of the characters, the protagonist of Nobel Nobel. Another quote, my life would prove a different point altogether. This is brilliant quote. My life would prove a different point altogether. Very tired of the modern form of historicism which sees in its civilization the defeat of the best hopes of Western religion and thought, what Heidegger calls the second fall of man into the quotidian or the ordinary. No philosopher knows what the ordinary is, has not fallen into it deeply enough. The question of ordinary human experience is the principal question of these modern centuries. I again repeat, the question of ordinary human experience is the principal question of these modern centuries. Montaigne and Pascal, otherwise in disagreement, both clearly saw. And what did they see? The strength of a man's virtue or his spiritual capacity measured by his ordinary life, says Nobel in Herzog. Considering his whole life, he realized that he has done wrong in everything. In everything, his life was, as they say, ruined. But since he, in the first place, was not worth much, there was no particular reason for regret. Reflecting on the stinking sofa about centuries, the 19th, the 16th, the 18th, he found in the last saying he liked, grief is, sir, a kind of laziness, says Nobel in Herzog. Herzog highly recommended twice. And then the last novelist, he was awarded Nobel Prize in Literature in the year 1999 from the last century, was none other than Günter Grass. And he was awarded Nobel Prize in Literature, and the Nobel Prize Committee cites, whose frolicsome black fables portray the forgotten face of history. The forgotten face of history. I have misplaced his book, so sorry I cannot, show it to you. You can start anything, either from Tin Drum or the Dog Ears, anything. I have always been told it makes a good impression to begin modestly by asserting that novels no longer have heroes because individuals have ceased to exist, that individualism is a thing of past, that all human beings are lonely, all equally lonely with no claim to individual loneliness, and that they all form some nameless mass void of heroes. Another quote, behind all sorrows in the world, he saw a ravenous hunger. All human suffering, he believed, could be cured with a portion of blood sausage. You see, this is a huge ironical statement here. What quantities of fresh blood sausages with rings of onion, washed down with beer, he consumed in order to make his friend think his sorrow's name was hunger and not someone else, says Günter Grass in the Tin Drum. So guys, I have recommended 10 Nobel Prize winners from my subjective point of view. I hope you have enjoyed it. Please do let me know, because there were just 10 names from almost 120 names that I had to select. So that was a difficult task, and the reasons for omission I have already stated. So I hope you have enjoyed the video. Please comment, please like, share and subscribe. If you've still not liked, shared and subscribed my YouTube channel, Arguably the Reading Quest, please do that. Happy reading, guys.